welcome to term 2 of PLP. So this term's focus is more around workplace skills and actually applying for jobs. So the key aspects that we're going to cover this term are things like resume writing, addressing criteria for jobs, preparing for interviews, and writing cover letters. So just a disclaimer, as we go through these lessons, it's really important, and because we're going to be using style for these modules, that you keep a record of the tasks that are required. And you're going to find this useful because over time, as we do these questions and go through these lessons, all of this information that you're going to have written on style is basically going to be what you need for your cover letter. It's going to be very, very useful for the interview assessment, and it's going to be very helpful for your resume stuff. So by having it all there and doing all these questions, by the time the assignments come around, you can kind of just collect all that information, put it all together, polish it up, and you're pretty much done. So it saves a lot of time when the assignment comes around, but it's very important that you do it and you keep track of that. You could create a section in your OneNote as well, where you sort of just copy and paste everything if you want to. But given that we're doing it in style, it's probably not necessary because you've got all the information there. So the assessment for this term is the resume and a cover letter. I'll explain that in the next lesson, but you'll basically construct a highly polished resume linking to your capabilities and strengths and a job or career that you're intending. And you'll also attach a cover letter to it, which will be addressing the specifications that the job entails, as well as talking about your capabilities and how they relate to the job and how you're going to build on them. So this is basically the plan for this term. So today we're looking at finding the job and addressing the criteria. Next lesson we're going to look at writing a resume. Then we're going to talk about understanding the roles and responsibilities of those career paths that you are thinking about, so you truly understand everything that you can about that job that you want to do. You don't go in with this false idea of what it's about, get into it and realize, oh, this is not what I thought it would be. The other thing we're going to look at is some really essential life skills once you get the job, such as how do I file a tax return? What are the things that I can do there to get the most amount of money back and make sure that I'm not just throwing away money, and be really savvy with that stuff. We're going to look at writing cover letters, and towards the end of the term, we'll start looking at interview skills. We'll do mock interviews and things like that for the next assignment after that. So looking at finding a job, there's several main ways that we can do this. The first one is just online, which is very, very common. And the other one is in person. And so we're going to look at how these two things work. Firstly, the online option. You could do this through a whole variety of search platforms. These are things like Seek, Indeed is another one, Defense Jobs, again, very specific to that industry, but they have their own job search platform. There are other things like Gumtree and Facebook. Sometimes this might be more contract-based. Sometimes this is genuine jobs. They're looking for builders or laborers, or some companies may even advertise through these platforms as well, just being in more modern times. Airtasker is another one, and Craigslist is a very, very common one. A bit more US-based, but Craigslist is a very common one over there for people to actually pick up work and get jobs. So then in person, we've got things like walking into a store, going into a company building and dropping off a resume. And that's still quite common. People often just print off multiple copies of their resumes and just go around handing them into stores, hoping that if there's work available, they'll consider you, or if not, they've got your resume on file so that next time a job pops up, they can just go, oh, I've got this person from like this period of time, I'll see if they're still interested, and you get the job. Sometimes you might just see a window ad, which is very common more for things like stores, fast food, retail, stuff like that. They sometimes just stick a sign on the window saying, hey, looking for someone, apply within. You go in, drop off your resume. The other one is word of mouth. So that whole networking, that personal social capacity is super useful for this. The amount of times that I've got jobs or got jobs for people purely through knowing people. So you know someone that's looking for a job, and then you run into someone else that says, oh, you know, I'm thinking about this, and you go, great, I've got a person that would be perfect for that. So sometimes it's just word of mouth to pass it on. Contacts as well. Who you know can sometimes be very important, as well as just having good relationships. Your referees, which comes into the resume, super important for this. Who you know can make a big difference for this stuff. Volunteering is another great one. There's a lot of jobs out there where you can get into the industry and even just experience. A lot of people mentioned in their goals that they wanted to get some experience or work experience in that industry. volunteering is a fantastic way to do it. Sometimes you have to think outside of the employed paid perspective, and you've got to think, well, I'll give up some of my time with the hope or the intention that I can show them how good I am, and they're going to be so impressed that they'll then employ me full-time or part-time, whatever it is that you want. So volunteering is a great way to get your foot in the door. Don't be disheartened. So as we go through this stuff, and you're at that age now that some of you have jobs, some of you are applying for jobs, and particularly because we're talking about long-term career jobs for most of this course, we're not just talking about getting you a job at Foodland or Macca's or a cafe, things like that. We're talking about those career jobs that you can do for long periods of time or for the rest of your life if you feel so inclined. So don't be disheartened. You won't always get the first job that you apply for. You won't always nail every interview. Even the most successful people will tell you that they've gone to interviews that were just a shambles, or they've applied for jobs and got knocked back and just told that they were no good or they weren't relevant for this position. So sometimes you've just really got to have a bit of fortitude in these things, and just don't be disheartened. Don't take it personally. Sometimes, particularly in businesses, often you won't get any feedback. They'll just say nothing, or you just won't get the phone call. So sometimes it's really important that you don't give up. And also there's a video linked within the style module that you can look at next, which it's a little bit old, but it's a great video. He's a very famous motivational speaker, and he talks about his own career, about getting into a radio company. And the message there is really good about staying hungry, about not giving up, being really persistent. And for us, this links to things like calling up the place that you've applied for, maybe a week, 2 weeks later, and just saying, hey, I'm just wondering where we're at with that job application. Have you guys made a decision yet? Often they'll say, no, sorry, we're still processing it. You're like, great. You call them back the next week and say, oh, just checking in, just wondering if you've had a chance to review my application. I'd love to talk to you guys further if you have any questions. And you keep doing that. And while that sounds like you're nagging them, a lot of companies actually really love that. You put your name in the back of their head, and then as they're going through, they're like, man, this person really wanted that job, and they were really determined. And that's what people want. They're not going to say, oh, they're nagging us, I'm not going to employ this person. They're going to say, this person genuinely wants the job, they're really passionate, and that's what a company wants. They don't want the person that just applies and says, I don't really care. I'm not going to call them, I'm not going to follow it up. I'm not fussed. So addressing the criteria required. This is going to be a series of questions that follow on the module. And basically it's about actually knowing what does the job application want from the applicant. So things as simple as being qualified. Obviously, if you want to go work as a vet, there's no point applying if you don't have a vet degree, because they're not interested. But there's also a lot more to that. So it links to the SACE capabilities, and that's where the assessment will come in, talking about what are the SACE capabilities that they're mentioning. And often they won't use that language because companies don't often use the SACE capability language. But you can think about, okay, well, they want someone that is a good communicator. I know from my understanding that links to personal and social capacity, and perhaps even literacy. So I can link that to my capabilities. So it's really important that we know that. But also just things like, do they want full-time, part-time people? Do they want someone that works by themselves, or do they want someone that works as a team? And how can I prove to them that I'm good in a team or good on my own? Things like that. So the questions that follow this are all about addressing those criteria. Once you've completed those questions, there's a little thing at the bottom for you to do about starting to try and achieve your goals. So do those little 5%ers, 1%ers that can help you get closer and closer to actually achieving those goals that you've listed from the first assignment.
You can do it!